to the Belvista Studios Show. We have Jaya as our guest today. I'm very excited. You've shown so much talent, and I really like the thoughtfulness that you put into your ideas. I think you are a curious learner, and I think that shows through what you are producing. So over to you, Jaya. You can share your screen because this is an opportunity for us to be inspired by practitioners around the world and improve our own practices.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Jayashree. People call me Jaya here. So I'm a senior learning designer with Grid Synergy Singapore. So I majorly work with universities, banks, and other corporates in Singapore to bridge the learning needs of learners here. So far so good. The journey has been good so far. So today I'm going to present one of my projects that is very, very, very close to my heart because I really got very good comments from Kath and Kim during the presentation of the show. I think it was in the quarterfinals round. So this is a very close to my heart project. So let me first play it.
Cool. Oh, I remember this one.
Can you hear the audio also?
No. Okay. You can maybe, if you do share screen, check that it says to show your computer sound.
Okay, let me check that. It's important to have the audio also to be sharing. Okay, I think I've enabled now.
Yeah, we got it.
So whenever, whatever modules I create, right? So I always hear this word in my ears that my boss often repeats. She often refers back to the Gagne's 9 steps of instructions. So any project, anything that comes to my, and if I'm starting any new project with a new SME, I always go back to those 9 steps of instruction, Gagne's instructions. So similarly, this one is the attention grabber. So usually I think when you add sounds, it retains the emotion of the learners. So it actually captures. So I always do that as a, it's like is a must do for me. I always add some music to gain the attention. And then this entire color code, I've taken entirely from the logo which Kath and Kim provided us during the session. So the entire color, if you see, is everything taken from this logo itself. Okay, let's start.
Hi, it's Hala. I'm back again. I have something really important to talk about.
I'm not playing this video fully. So why I've added this video in the first place is it's a kind of attention gaining. Okay, you always get your learners' attention first and then you proceed to the learning journey. So it can be anything. You can ask a question, it could be a video, or it could be an open-ended question, but some way you can actually capture your learners' attention. And this is a short brief of what this e-learning does. This entire e-learning, if you see, there's very, very, very less number of words on screen, which I personally like. But generally, when you work with corporate clients or universities, this cannot be used. There's a lot of content to be delivered, right? So, but if there's a chance for you to reduce the number of words on screen, it definitely helps to keep the attention very well. Okay, okay, now you got the attention of your learners. What's next? So I always, is like a timetable I follow. So it's like, let the learners know what they are supposed to be learning in the module. I think when you tell them that you're going to learn all this, they have some control over the learning. It's like you're giving them a brief intro. Okay, this is what is expected of you when you end the module. So I think it gives them satisfaction. Okay, so I'm going to learn this. I know what needs to be done at the end of this course. So I've given a very usual format of the learning objectives. Okay, so once you start the training, sometimes when the training is given to the learners group can be a variety of people. It could be the senior management or the middle level of people or new joinees. So it is always best to convey who this entire learning is addressed to. Sometimes some trainings they may not require because they're already on the senior level. So it's always best to include in your course. Even when you start analyzing the course, the first question you should be asking your SMEs, who is this addressed to? What are the learning needs? So once you know the needs, right, so you start working on that format. Okay. Okay, and so, okay, now I've informed my learners of their objectives. So the next step, you should always go back to know what they already know. Like, for
Mm.
example, they could have learned this earlier, they could have read about it earlier. So it's always, you should stimulate their previous learning. Do they know this? There's something they can relate to. So I usually have something like a did you know slide or a quiz question or some kind of interactivity. So here I've made use of a did you know and small information. Okay, so I have recalled the prior learning. The next
Mm.
step is to actually present the content itself. So it's like, since I mentioned earlier, I made use of very few text on screen. This one is a very, very small activity. So it just tells you, let them ponder. Okay, it's going to be like an open-ended questions. So the questions ask the learners, am I being bullied at my workplace? So I don't want the learners to answer me. Is more for their self-realization and they just answer themselves. Okay, so then a simple activity, because we have already presented some content. So for example, you have to present the knowledge to them. So you just give them, for example, what is a repeated behavior? Is all these are not terminologies. So it's like you're letting the learner to learn these terminologies, to find the terminologies. They may know that such things exist, but they may not know there are such terminologies assigned. So for example, these are click and display content. So it's a similar, just giving them what it is. So this one is like, when, okay, you've given the content and everything is already given. So what's next is like you provide a guidance for them. So how can the guidance be? It could be like small quiz questions. The quiz questions can be, it depends on whether you want to, record the answers. For me, I keep this as an open-ended because the topic itself is quite sensitive. So I always keep these questions, just open-ended for the learners themselves. So they need not submit the answers to me. And always whenever I feel such topics come in, right, it's best to give them real case studies, so they relate it well. They can always go back and refer. It could be real newspaper links. It could be from the office, some backup that has happened. So it's always best to give them real case studies so they can relate it well. So for example, in this case study, if I click on, I tell them what the exact problem was. What did the problem, how was the problem caused? What's actually, I've used the word catalyst here. So
Mm.
what's the response from reflection from the organization, from the HR and the CEO? And based on this problem, was there any change in the situation? So yeah, so the current situation, the CEO and HR, they work together. So I've given some details. Similarly, for case study 2 is the same format. So I give them, this was the problem, what caused the problem, what was the response and reflection, and then the current situation. So what are the steps taken by the team?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is a very, very simple graded questions. So it's like they can answer any number of times and there's no time limit, because I think such topics are more for personal learning and it's not for organizational reasons. Like it's not part of your KPIs. It's more for the employees' benefit. Okay, because it's always best, you should always give your learners some kind of feedback, whether they have answered it correctly or wrongly. But I always prefer giving immediate feedback. Sometimes, we used to have like 100 questions and the learners answer and they come back, they almost forget what they've answered.
Yeah.
So I always feel, instant feedback really helps. Okay, if I'm going to select this, okay, is it right or wrong? I can immediately see my answer. So instant feedback is something that I always encourage SMEs to adopt. And then, okay, once my entire course is completed, maybe this could be like a 10 minutes module or 15 minutes module. I always prefer the learning shouldn't end there. It should
Mm.
continue in some form or the other. Usually I tell my SMEs, can I add your contact number in the slide so the learner can come back to you and they can ask you questions, or can I add some references, or can I add some links, external links? So I think whatever context the learning is, it shouldn't end within the package. I open the package, I see through the slides, and I close it. So my learning ends there. No, it shouldn't be that way. It should always continue, continue. Either you can give them some resources which they can refer to, or sometimes, some external YouTube videos that they can refer to, or the SME's contact, or anything in any form where the learning keeps continuing.
Yeah, love that.
And usually this module is the conclusion. Okay, I'm going to enhance the retention and transfer. Is the last step of the Gagne's 9 steps of instruction. Is like, okay, the entire module, what did it tell you? So I'm just rephrasing that in one whole sentence. I'm not going to give you the typical conclusion slide, but I'm just telling you the entire module is this one sentence. Yeah,
I love
so
that.
I ended this way. Yeah, this is one I wanted to share today.
Very cool, very cool. I love it. It's nice to see you apply that throughout your slide, and yeah, it's really cool. It's just kind of quick, sharp, to the point, but still meets the objectives. So that's really cool.
Yeah, sometimes what happens is in the industrial courses, like in real time, we may not be able to apply such things. Because there are reasons, because the SME always wants to give like the entire stuff to the learner. So sometimes we may not be able to follow all these graphic standards. So I always think, okay, it should be 70% graphics and 30% text. So if I always learn better when it's a picture than a text. So I always want the learner to look and learn than to read something and learn. That's why I don't add even the voiceover, right? Sometimes when people add voiceover, sometimes they read faster than listening to the audio. So sometimes you should always prefer, I think you should get to know how your learners learn and then you design. That's why it's important, during the analysis phase, when you sit down with your SME, you should ask questions to know the client better, the learners better. As much as we give importance to the content itself, you should give importance to the learners also. You should ask more questions about the learners than the content itself. I think many of us don't do that. I never used to do that in my initial stage. I always used to focus on my content. But then I realized some point of time, the focus must be on the learners. Let's keep in mind, when we design such things, keep the learners in mind and not just the content.
Yeah. When you when your SME comes to you, what's your process? So for the instructional design side of things, would you normally get content from them and then they're saying, please turn this into a course? Or do you say like, no, I'm not going to look at that, but I want to come have a conversation with you? And then what do you do to turn it into a storyboard, for example?
Okay, when I usually get any new requirements, I know it depends on what kind of projects we get and what kind of SME background they are. So some people, I think in the recent years, they have been very open and adaptable. So they know the importance of learning. So they let the instructional designer talk first, and then they listen to what all can be done. So what I usually do is we present samples that we've done in the past. Okay, I can do this for your learning. So they can actually have an option to choose from. Okay, so they choose certain formats. It could be like a RISE course, or is it an articulate storyline game, or anything. So suppose if they want to, make the learning engaging, we usually support, I think recent times many are adopting gamifications. I've done a few in the past. So it's like, how can this gamification be brought into this context? So I'm not going to give all the text, I'm not going to transfer the entire text to my learning, but it's going to be a game-based one. So I sit down with the SME, write down how it can be done. If there's a game strategy, draw the strategy, tell them that this is how it can be done, and then we convert it. So it's like, since I told you already, get to know about your learners. So who are the learners? Who are the end people who are going to access these packages? What is the age group? Will they like a game? Will they like reading a content? Will they like to see something like a leaderboard where they compete with each other? So you should know all these questions about the learners in the first place.
Yeah. Are you often the instructional designer and the e-learning developer?
It really depends. Usually, yes.
Yeah.
Usually, yes. But it depends. Usually, most of the times, I think currently in my current job, my job is like I am involved in all we usually follow AD process for all the projects, right? So I'm involved in all the process, but I do have developers coming in, to help me with the coding, with the storyline packages and all. But yeah, majorly I work with the design phase where the instruction strategy is finalized, the content is finalized, the chunking, everything is done, and then someone comes and help for me for the development phase.
Yeah, okay, cool. So you still have quite a structure. So you're focusing on analysis, content,
yes,
and then move
yes,
into development. So you're not really blurring the lines.
No, I think because once we know what needs to be done in the stage phases, I think is very clear. It helps you to, just respect the timeline and work accordingly.
Yeah, yeah, nice. What else did I have? Oh, I wanted to ask you about your case studies. How would you normally write a case study?
Okay, I think for this example, I referred online. Sometimes when you work with SMEs, right, they usually have very good examples from their own past, sometimes companies, like when they want to do such topics, right, they definitely have a background. We just change the names, we just change the date. Sometimes, the employee could relate to it. Okay, this incident happened like few years ago in my company, so maybe they'll be able to relate it. So usually exact case studies, it comes from the SMEs, but we do, beautify it in a way that it doesn't apply to real people.
Yeah, I like that. And I liked your structure, like this is the problem, this is how it played out. Like I thought that was a nice journey to kind of chunk
So
the
since
story.
I mentioned about the amount of text, right, but I think case studies and all, it could be read as a text. It should be okay. And I think another way, maybe if I had more time, I would have created an animated video.
Yeah.
So whichever format is easier for the learners to digest. So that's why I put them in chunks. When it is in chunk format, it won't be like I'm not going to burden the learner to read so much. So
Yeah.
like, okay, this is the problem, this is the solution. Okay, they can do it quickly when it is in chunked format.
Yeah, I like that. The animation at the beginning, did you create that or did you get it from somewhere?
No, I took it from a free source image. I mean, it's an open source video, which is available. So usually, since this is for the presentation for the show, I used it, and maybe I can show you. I've referenced it as an open source one.
Hi, it's
So I've actually licensed them under Creative Commons.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, but usually, for projects that we do in real time, we do create our own animations.
What tools
Such
do you
animations, like for example, if I decide to have an animation, I usually sit down with the SME to get the context of the animation, and then I do the storyboarding. So storyboarding, it could either be in PPT or rough sketch. Then I ask my developer to pitch in some ideas. Okay, I want to show something like this, and then they give me the inputs. So we work together in that phase. So for the animations, I usually develop a separate storyboard apart from the courseware itself.
That's cool. Would
The context comes from the SME.
Yeah. Would you have them review your animation script and the storyboard at the same time?
Yes. Sometimes when they give the script, right, it may not be very perfect in order to convert into an animation, because the flow won't be there. Like the transition between the scenes won't be there. So sometimes I rephrase it, and some SMEs are okay because context like this, is okay. But sometimes if it is going to be like very technical content, they don't want to change. Yes, we respect that, then we don't change. But certain content, yes, you can make some changes, and you just let the SME know that you've made it. The reason is it needs to flow from, like, for example, one scene to the next scene. There needs to be a transition, right? So major changes are okay when it is supporting the animation.
Yeah, I agree. That's what we do, is like when we implement client feedback, or what we do is we say it's actioned, or if we haven't actioned or we've changed it, we explain why. And that's, we don't always share that back to the client, but if they did come back and ask us, then we know. And it also helpful when like a couple of revisions down the track maybe, or if they come back in the year's time to update the course and they're like, oh, why didn't we do that last time? Then we can be like, oh, this is why, so we don't have to remember. So
So yes, so the storyboarding is like the LD, the learning designer draws the storyboard, but we also have another phase before the animations. We term it style frames. So the animator who does the animation first sketches the scenes before we actually animate, because it takes quite some time, right? So before they actually put into a real animation, we sketch it. We get the SME to make any changes during this stage, and then we start animation.
Yeah, that's cool. That is clever, because animation's hard and time consuming to change. So you
so we always have this style frames in place.
Yeah. You know how you've got your rounded corners in there? Because this is built in Articulate, yeah? Articulate
Yes.
360.
Yes.
How did you get your rounded corners on the border?
I think by default it is rounded. It is visible because of the color, I guess. Usually it is in white or gray, so people can't see
Oh,
the
so it's
rounded
the
one.
player.
Yeah, the player.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think the color shows the enhances the borders. I think usually otherwise also it is in the same shape. I think the
Yeah,
color enhances it.
yeah. Well, it's nice because I didn't realize that was the player. I thought that was a feature that you'd added. So it's a good
No,
touch.
it's the default one. I think the color shows the feature. The default one is also, I think usually it's in gray or black or white,
Yeah.
right? So it's not very visible. That's why when there's less text on space, right, we can notice all this. When there's so much text, our mind doesn't go there.
And what about where did you get your graphics from? Your
Most of my graphics are from Shutterstock. So yeah, it's my go-to place.
Me
I
too.
always go to Shutterstock. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, we've just recently started using Canva, not for
Mhm.
photos, but more for
Mhm.
like template design.
Infographics. Yeah, I use Canva also very often for infographics. It's very quick. For someone coming from a non-graphic background, I'm not a graphic designer, so it's like a blessing for me. I can create like very quickly, very pro-looking
Yeah,
infographics.
yeah, definitely.
Yes.
What else did I have here? Oh, I wanted to know what, because you love Gagne's, I don't know how to pronounce it. Are there any other models that you love using or that you find yourself continuously using?
Uh, Always I go back to AD. Even my any projects folder, I use the format. It's like OCD to me. So my the content, everything, the flows, everything in the respective folders of analysis, design,
Yeah,
development, implementation, and evaluation. So even the folders, along the project, I put them in the respective folders. So anybody asks me, okay, give me this, I immediately go to the respective folder. So I follow AD very much. And I also follow I'm not sure of the name, but it's called multimedia principles that I came to know about a few years ago, which I follow in terms of how much graphic to use, how much to emphasize on the font colors that we use. Should we keep in mind about people who are color blind? So I do use some multimedia principles because I think especially for people who come from non-multimedia background, such
yeah,
principles does help.
I agree. And that's something everyone can just Google, graphic design principles, multimedia
Yes,
principles.
yes.
It does help you because it actually makes such a difference to the design. And until you're aware of them, you don't know what you don't know, but it can
Yes,
really just help you lift your designs.
exactly. Yes.
Have there been any challenges that you've had recently? And yeah, if you have one in mind, I want to think about how you would, if you dealt with it next time, how would you deal with it next time so it goes better?
Okay, something. What would? Okay, let me think about it.
So maybe, because it sounds like, I think if I think of the people that would be watching, you're working closely with an SME. So a challenge might be a time where you and an SME didn't agree. And then what did you do? Maybe they didn't like what, sometimes actually this happens. They're all, yeah, I love the storyboard where that's the right content. Then you develop it and then they're like, no, I want to change it. And you're like, but we already agreed on this. So maybe that will spur some inspiration for challenges.
Okay, something in the past, a few years ago, when we were working with another organization, there was a change in the team management team. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like when the people changed, everything changed. So they were like, okay, we need to change all this that we've done in the past. Everything was approved and everything was done. So they wanted some design changes because there were new branded guidelines. So it was like going back and doing the same thing over and again with no cost because I think still it was under the warranty period. So
Yeah.
what could be done is by right I usually make use of the master slide across my storyline packages. So I always make use of the master slide effectively, like to the point. So when this change came up, like it looked like everything needs to change from the color, font, everything.
Yeah.
So when I went back and realized, okay, projects that I did since we were using a master slide, it was okay to convert. So it didn't take much of a time. I just made changes in my master slide and overall font place, and it was good to go. But projects that was done prior to me, it was done on slide basis, right? So we had to manually change everything. So it's like, you templatize everything properly. So it's easier for people who's going to come after you to change it. So it's always like, even SMEs change, or companies, they decide to change something or some addition, always make it easy for people who come after you, right? To, make life easy for them. So make use of whatever makes work lesser.
Yeah, I like that. And what about, have you had ever a time where a client or like a subject matter expert has disagreed with you from a learning perspective? So you believe this is the best way to teach something, to train something, and they've said, no, I want to do it this way. How did you handle that?
Very, very unique. Okay, very unique is it's quite a few years ago, from someone who was from a non-e-learning background, was trying to do e-learning. So he was not interested to do it, was forced on him from his management. So when we worked with him, he didn't like the learning objectives slides. He said, no, I don't want learning objectives. Why should I let my learner know? Then, okay, I went ahead, I told him, let me show you some examples. And then, I always match my quiz questions on my learning objectives. So I told him, in order to know let your learners know that they're going to learn this in advance, you tell them, okay, these are the things that you're expected out of this learning package. And then when they go back to the quiz questions, each quiz questions will be matched to the learning objective. So I told him this is the reason he included, then he agreed. Because it took a while for me to convince him. But then when he saw many examples, many other people doing the same thing, he was agreeable to it.
Yeah, okay, cool. So being able to explain the why, the reasoning behind, to justify the decision.
Yes. Yeah. It takes a lot of time to convince people, but I think in the end it's worth it.
Yeah. And I think it's easier when you have a goal and everything is mapped back to the goal. And for us, we've found it so important to co-create the goal with the right people, so that everyone has the buy-in from the beginning, and then we can say, does this help us meet our goal, or help us understand how this meets our goal? And then they can kind of go, yeah, maybe it doesn't. That's cool. What are you learning? What, in terms of e-learning development, what are you experimenting with at the
moment? Is just the usual courses and clients, but I'm reading more on, since I'm starting to explore the graphical side of e-learning. So I'm just learning all these multimedia principles, some tools like Canva and all that, how I can, function without a graphic designer. There are courses that I've done without a graphic designer. So I'm just improvising in that side. So my graphics look as much as what a graphic designer can do.
That's cool. Well, actually, I'll send you the link. One of our videos we recorded is on graphic design tips and typography and how that can be applied. So my team are also developing those skills. So I'll send you that video when we put it on.
Thank you so much, Kim.
And it'll be in the link in the description for this one as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. People watching this can also access it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I don't have any other questions about your project, but is there anything you would like to share? If you think
maybe I can ask you some questions. So like the usual, people, when you go for an interview, people ask you, how did you land in a learning designer job?
No, this is about you though. You can't interview me.
No, it's okay. I always ask any learning designer, like whenever new people I meet, I ask them, how did you land in a learning designer job?
Well, that's the question I have for you. I'm flipping it back on you.
Okay, because I was in my final year college, and we had a college placement from a e-learning company, and the description was so interesting. Like people who love to learn, who love to be a bridge between the learners and learning, who love to travel and explore and all that. So I think I just took it up, and I was selected. I was the only one selected from my college for that company. So I went ahead, and it was very, from learning from scratch. So it was so good.
That's cool. Is there any, when you think back to like when you were younger, maybe a teenager, are there any similarities of passion there that link to you being passionate about it now? Because it is clear that you're
Yeah, I think at some point of time, everyone visualizes them to be a teacher, like everyone in their life. Some point of time, yeah, I do wish, but I didn't want to get into the usual teaching or a professor or a lecturer. But I always feel I chose a good job because, you know, I'm being a bridge between learners and learning, and I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, that's cool. What tips would you have for anyone that's starting to learn instructional design or e-learning development?
I would say start with a clean slate. Don't keep anything in mind. Don't expect anything out of the job. Just start learning, you know, explore as much as you can. uh, Today, you know, like anyone can become an instructional designer if they have an open mind. You know, you should adopt and you should learn. So when they're open minded, I think it does help you. So always start in a clean slate. Start learning from the beginning. Is okay, you know. Sometimes, you know, you can be like a beginner, and then you start from scratch. It always helps. I see many people, you know, and I am a part of many Facebook e-learning groups.
Yeah.
So people tell like they have 20 years of teaching experience and they want to start instructional design as a career. Those people are very open-minded. They are acceptable to suggestions. They are okay with people, you know, teaching them who are much younger to them in age. I think this is most important. You should be very, very open-minded.
Yeah. Do you think that you need qualifications to do what we do?
Yes.
You do? Oh, we're gonna have an
Yes.
argument now. Nice.
Why? Because I think actually I don't come from instructional design degree. I'm actually an engineer. So I would say yes, because certainly because in the past many companies, you know, it becomes a requirement. I say yes because of that. No, I also say no because I didn't need one.
Yeah.
I learned on my job. So it was like more like on the job learning. I think learning designers are always learning, like every day is learning. You do something today and you learn something new. So that's the interesting part of work. I used to tell my husband, your work is very boring. You do the same thing again. For me, it's like very different. I do new things every day.
Yeah, I agree. And link in the description, we have a video, you can get my perspective on it. I won't
Awesome.
go here, but I don't think you need a degree. Well, what that piques now another question I have for you.
Mhm.
What similarities or things do you apply, skills or methodologies from the engineering world to instructional design?
Okay, there's something that one thing I always thank my engineering background. I always, you know, do a flow chart whenever I'm given a complex project. So it's always, you know, example, when I do gaming courses, I first draw the plan of the game, as in how the game should function. I think if I don't have the engineering background of doing all those flow charts, the programming flow charts, I couldn't do that now. So I always draw my, you know, the process flow of what should happen. Okay, answer is yes or no. It should go back to this. So the entire flow chart, I do complex flow charts and I'm given this complex projects right now. So I always go back, you know, like a kid, I always draw the flowchart fully and then I understand the process. So it's easier for me to explain it to another third person who comes inside the project, like a developer or someone. I always refer them back to the flowchart.
That's really cool. Is there any other skills that you apply? Any transferable skills?
Uh, Nothing that I could think of at the moment.
What about in terms of problem solving?
Oh,
And
yeah. Problem solving, yes. Because I think if you ask someone from say someone from a software engineering, they know only their stuff. Someone
yeah,
who comes from a mechanical background, they know only mechanical stuff. But if you ask an instructional designer, the kind of projects we do, we learn a lot, right? So for example, SME from random background, some hospitalization project comes up, we're able to provide solutions. Why? Because we think from their perspective, we think from a problem solving perspective. I think
yeah,
yes, it does help.
that's cool. That's very cool. Okay, thank you, Jaya, for the knowledge that you have shared today on the Belvista Studios Show. I appreciate
It
you.
was, yeah, it was actually very brightening for me also, you know, to someone asking me and me recollecting what I've done in the past.
Yeah. Well, you have lots of knowledge and it's nice to see, like, I didn't know you had an engineering background. It's really cool to hear that story and the transferable skills. And even just like you saying that the process flow chart, like I can
Yeah.
see how that would add value. And I think about sometimes where I have drawn it like that or used post-it notes to help plan. So no, that's really cool. Well, thank you. I would like to encourage everyone, check out the description. You'll be able to follow Jaya and what she's up to. We'll put links to her socials and stuff. Please share or like, or I'd love actually to encourage you to pick something that Jaya has shared today and hold yourself accountable to apply it back into your role or a future project or a current project that you're working on. So thank you also for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Good luck.